speakers, please come up to the front. If you're speaking, please come up to the shelter.
With one of our favorite songs, Granny Stand for Peace and Justice.
We are the raging, raging grannies. We don't hide in nooks and crannies. We stand up for peace and justice, even when the police bust us. Raging, raging grannies, time to get up off your fannies. Working folks to take a stand, and that's why we are
Please join us in the chorus of America the Turbulent.
America, don't let injustice win. Unite and fight for human rights. Together, let's begin.
We have a vision of a better future. This song was written by Albuquerque granny Sally Alice Thompson, who at 96 is currently fasting on behalf of the abused children at our border and across the globe. Please join us in the chorus of Our Vision. We start
The glory of a coming world of peace, with a blessed end of poverty, equalities increase. A healthier environment, great schools for one and all. Peace and justice is our call. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Reading and no more will rule ya. Corporately, hallelujah. The truth will make us free. In the beauty of our Mother Earth, we'll fly a peaceful dove, with security for everyone across the sea with love. We'll reject the grapes of wrath, the bitter taste of hate and fear, with values we hold dear. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Greedy men no more will rule ya. Corporea won't fool ya. The truth will make us free.
Here's how the grannies feel. Please join us in the chorus of Immigrant Rights.
Have a friend who traveled north with her family. This is the only home she knows. She dreams like you and me. Her dad works on a dairy farm. She's an engineer. Let's change the law to keep their skills and their talents here. Stand up and fight for immigrant rights. They come to work. Don't slam the door. Stand up and shout with all your might. We're all created equal, not some less and others more. Free traders like to build a wall so only the money gets through. If all the riches travel north, the people will come through. Corn used to be a source of life and rural people thrive. But now it's a commodity. You gotta go north to survive. Stand up and fight for immigrant rights. work. Don't slam the door. Stand up and shout with all your might. We're all created equal, not some less and others more. I have a friend who's Mexican. She brightens up my day. She wishes she could visit home, but danger marks the way. We're all in love with family as long as it's our own. But Mexicans who come to work must leave their children home. Stand up and fight for immigrant rights. They come to work. Don't slam the door. Stand up and shout with all your might. We're all created equal, not some less than others more.
The Granny's response to this.
Here we stand with helping hands, reaching out towards victims, pledging now a solemn vow that will welcome you in. Come to be refugee, you the tired, the poor, by my light in the night, welcome now to our shore.
Thank you. The dreamers are rightfully skeptical. They are afraid. We were a country of opportunity, but we've pulled the rug out from under them.
I am not to blame. I have earned the name American in my heart. This country is my home. All I've known, my dreaming was only the start. I'm going to stay for all my life to send me away. Cuts like a knife, I counted on DACA. All I dare to do is dream. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream.
Thank you. The Granny's answer.
Let's give another hand for the Raging Grannies, guys. And here is the organizer of Indivisible, Linda Kessel. Let's give her an applause. She helped organize all this.
Now he took the first line of my talk, so. Good evening, I'm Linda Kessel. I'm an organizer with Indivisible Madison, and it is great to see so many faces here tonight. We need to remember why we're here. This is a vigil. This is to shine a light on the horrible atrocities that are being done to children in detention at our border. And it's not just here. There are more than 600 observances on 5 continents. And so I think we can feel a real sense of pride and power in that kind of company. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing tonight. We've got some great speakers who will be joining us. And then at 9 o'clock is when all of these celebrations across the world are joining in a candlelight vigil. We will have people pass out candles and some people lighting them. And what we plan to do is to take them over to the bridge across West Washington Avenue so we get as much visibility as we can. There are 2 banners to hang from the railings. One says "Close the Camps" and the other says "Lights for Liberty." And so we want to make as big a splash at nighttime as we can. So thank you for all working with us for that. I lost my bird. So we've got the Raging Grannies of Madison, and our first person we're going to hear from is Rabbi Andrea Steinberger from UW Hillel.
And the only way is to forge new paths where we stand together and resist the temptation of being pulled apart. In his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire says, sooner or later, the oppressed will perceive their state of depersonalization and discover that as long as they are divided, they will always be easy prey for manipulation and domination. Unity and organization can enable them to change their weakness into a transforming force with which they can recreate the world and make it more human. That's what we are tonight. We are transforming force. We are transforming force that is recreating a world that calls for America to live up with the standards of remembering that all of God's people ought to be treated like human beings. This will not be done by simply staying on the sidelines, praying, and hoping that the government will be what it's supposed to be. No, no. This transformation will be done by people of goodwill who will put their bodies and their souls in motion. Yes! Yes! When we find one another in this space, then we use our bodies, we use our voices, we use our instruments, we use our notes, our talents to create power and to ensure that families share in all the ideals of the American dream. As Dr. King said, all we are asking for America is to be true to the huge promissory note that you signed years ago. We are coming to engage in dramatic nonviolent action to call attention to the gulf between the promise and fulfillment and to make the invisible visible. This is what we are going to do tonight. Letting our city, letting our county, letting our state, letting our elected officials, letting our community members, letting all those who believe that they got to live an invisible life to realize that we are here to stand with you, stand around you, protect you, stand in between you and injustice. Oh yeah, we're here. The time is now. We can no longer remain silent. So in our tradition, we sing songs like "We Shall Overcome." We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we will overcome. Not someday, not one day, not that day, but today. 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 God bless you, Madison. God bless you, Dane County. God bless you, Wisconsin.
Thank you. That was really powerful. Let's have a hand for Maggie Musgraves, who's going to tell us about her work sending baby clothes to those in need.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maggie Musgrave. I'm one of the co-founders of Alitas Angels. Thank you guys so much for coming. This is such a great turnout. It's really heartwarming. I'm here to tell you tonight how you can directly help the migrant children coming into our communities. Alitas Angels is a grassroots community effort that started right here in Madison. This is a local community effort that supports Casa Alitas, a shelter in Tucson that almost exclusively caters to families who are leaving ICE detention centers. We are supporting the children at the shelter with clothing. These are children who have lived days and weeks in the same clothing that they have crossed deserts in, the same clothing that they have stayed in the detention centers in. Those are just filthy, horrible, dirty detention centers that are causing these kids to be sick, to have fevers, to have coughs that linger. These are children that we're helping. Children are not political. Babies are not political. We have a responsibility to help these children. So Alitas Angels, which is right over there, we are collecting clothes and money to help them, to clothe them and to care for them as they continue their journey to their families and their sponsors here in the U.S. This shelter sees about 150 people a day on a slow day. Typically, they're really seeing more like 250 to 300 people a day. The need for clothes and medical supplies is great. We are fulfilling that need right here in Madison, and we're sending it to Casa Alitas in Tucson. So we need to stop standing by, and we need to start standing up for these babies. These are not somebody else's children. These are our children that we need to help. So our table is right over there. So you can come get more information. You can donate if you brought clothes tonight. That's wonderful. We do have a box over there. Emily is over there waving her hand, just in case you need to know where it is. If you didn't bring clothes tonight and you still want to help out, we have other multiple ways to help out. You can also drop clothes at any YMCA branch until the 21st. You can donate money. You can visit our Amazon wish list to send anything that these children need. We're sending them directly to the shelter. Those supplies are getting to the shelter. I want you guys to know that we are making a difference, and we're making a difference right here in Madison. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Maggie. I think a lot of us are very excited about being able to help these children. Now we're going to hear from Shabnam Lofty, who's an immigration attorney in Madison, and she can help tell us about what's happening right here in our own city. Thanks.
Thank you. So I wanted to share a little bit about my story as well. I was born in Iran, and I was 4 years old when my parents brought me to the US. And they left a war zone. Being an immigrant is hard, and I saw what it did to my parents. They give up their freedom, they give up their family and their culture and their language, all in exchange for freedom of oppression and for economic opportunity. And my family, probably like many of yours, picked America because this is the land of opportunity. And I asked my parents always, why did you pick America? Because this was the place that anybody from anywhere could belong. It's really hard because America, not just for decades, but for centuries, has told the rest of the world that this is the place for you, if you are willing to work hard, that if you strive, no matter who you are and where you're from, this could be a place for you. We have told this to the rest of the world for decades. So now, as an immigration attorney, as a proud American, as somebody who adores this country, for all the majestic beauty that it has, it is really, really hard. It is really hard to see families who walk 2,000 miles to get to the border, thinking that they're gonna follow their dreams, to see that dream turn into a nightmare. It is really, really hard. Because those families want what our families wanted. It is really hard for me as an attorney to sit across a family who wants just what you and I have, who's confused, who's scared, who's traumatized, and who says, why can't there be a place for me? I'll pay the taxes, I'll contribute, I'll work 2 jobs, I'll do what you want. Why can't I be an American? And I can't help but think I mourn for the America that I love. Because we're better than this. We're better than this. My faith is in the American people all over the country today. We, Wisconsinites, 1,500 miles away from the southern border, recognize the need to stand up and rightly criticize our government and demand that they make changes. It is because we love this country. It is because we love it that we criticize it and demand that these policies change and that we do better.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Beth Allman. She is an RN and Indivisible Madison organizer.
Hi, bear with me. As she said, I'm a nurse, not a public speaker, but I got a few things to say. So before nursing school, I worked in senior care for about a decade. And as I've watched the proliferation of these racist, bigoted policies over the past 3 years, it's made me think of some of the patients I've had and what they faced over their lifetime. One patient would describe to us what it would be like rounded up as a child and placed in a Japanese internment camp. Another had a number inked on his forearm from the time he was in a concentration camp. 70 years later, he would still awaken screaming at night from the terrors of what he experienced in those camps. A third, due to her condition, would hallucinate scenarios from her childhood as an African-American girl in rural Indiana. We would try to comfort her as best we could as she screamed that the KKK was coming to get her and that she had to find her family and hide. I can't get out of my head the memories of these 3 patients and several other I've had forever affected by this racism and bigotry. Even into their 80s and 90s, it pulled on their psyches and left permanent scars. Further, long-term trauma can change our very genetics. We've learned in school that for survival, certain genes can be turned on or off, and this can actually be passed on to your future children. While the field of epigenetics is new, research thus far has shown it can increase rates of certain diseases, mental health conditions, and predispositions to developing an addiction. So what lifelong and generational impacts are we causing now to immigrants and refugees' children at the borders? 6 children have died while in U.S. custody since the Trump administration's separation policy started a year ago. But let me describe some of those conditions we've heard through reporting. Families and children are routinely having their medications being taken away, which is extremely dangerous. They're held in conditions of high stress, both physically and emotionally, in crowded and unsanitary conditions that promote the spread of disease. Poor nutrition and inadequate hydration combined with outbreaks of diseases like scabies, chickenpox, and influenza. Children and families being sleep deprived from crowded conditions and 24/7 lighting, held in extreme temperatures, delayed access to both basic and emergency care. As a medical professional, it's honestly shocking to me that we haven't seen more people die, at least not yet. That's why we as a country cannot let this continue. These medical conditions violate the Constitution, and contrary to popular opinion in the White House, the Constitution still applies to those in our custody. From what I've described and what we've seen in the news, these conditions would meet any reasonable person's definition of cruel and unusual punishment, which is our 8th Amendment. Based on this amendment, the legal standards for medical care is that it can't reach the level of deliberately indifferent. Typically, a very difficult thing to prove in a court because it means surmising somebody's internal intention. However, even without a law degree, we can all see that this is deliberate, intentional indifference and cruelty.
Yeah!
Even more than violating our established constitutional laws and societal norms, it violates our shared value of basic humanity. Here at home, we are also witnessing the traumatization of our neighbors. I spent time as a nursing student volunteering in a free clinic here in Dane County, and I will always remember one patient just a little bit younger than me, desperately asking me to give her a permanent fix for her condition. I told her that there wasn't something I could do to make it go away, but I could work with the doctors to give her a medication that would manage the symptoms. She started to tear up, and I could hear panic creeping into her voice. "You don't understand. I'm afraid ICE will come for me and my family, that I won't be able to take my meds with me or have access to them. I don't want to die in jail." There's little as a nurse that feels worse than not being able to help your patient. It's like a punch in your gut, feeling helpless and angry. Not because a treatment doesn't exist, but because your own government and their inhumane policies are getting in your way of treating your patient. How many immigrants do we have right here in our own communities that are sick or in pain and are too afraid to go to a doctor or leave their house because of a fear of deportation? How many see their health conditions worsen because they can't leave their house to exercise or they're too afraid to get fresh fruit from the grocery store? That's where we can help, right here as a community. We can volunteer with groups like ones who have information at the back tables to bring needed supplies to immigrant families who are afraid of ICE. We can help with transportation to appointments so that they're not putting themselves at risk by driving. We can donate and raise awareness about what our local groups are doing and what they need. And we can put ourselves in the way of ICE, enforcing the privacy of a medical setting, asking for a judicial warrant if stopped when helping. Sorry. We can help by keeping this issue of the treatment of immigrants and refugees in our country at the forefront of our nation's mind, demanding our government to cease and desist. Also, during my time as a nursing student, I was able to train and learn in various correctional settings here in Wisconsin, federal and state prisons and county jails. Many of the things that we are outraged at right now, like putting LGBTQ people and people with disabilities or mental illness in solitary confinement, have actually been practiced in our country on these groups in our own correctional facilities for years. On any given day, our country has between 80,000 and 100,000 people locked away in solitary confinement, usually for their own safety, or as a solution to dealing with those who are mentally ill. While our eyes were closed, our nation's prisons have practiced incarcerating people so well that facilities have swelled to incarcerating over 2 million people, more than any other country on earth, with little public outcry until recently. They've been practicing. The impact of our mass incarceration machine has always fallen heavily and predominantly on Black and brown communities here in the US, including immigrants. Prisons, whether within the US or at the border, get away with this inhumane treatment because of a level of secrecy and a general ignorance or apathy from the country at large. This is what I've learned over my time in my clinicals. As people find out what happens inside, outrage grows because it's wrong what happens. We must continue to poke holes in that secrecy surrounding detention, seeking out opportunities to see what's inside, encouraging people that can report out to do so on what they're seeing, and lifting the voices of those who are inside, like these children. There are groups like Witness Homestead at the border bearing witness right now, groups like National Nurses United and Physicians for Human Rights sending doctors and nurses to provide care, groups like RICES and National Immigration Law Center providing legal representation. We need to support these groups and more in what they do and create a demand for the media that continues reporting these stories. We cannot look away. We cannot let the next headline grab our attention away from this issue and move on. Never again is now, and we need to do everything in our power to mean it. We need to keep focused and keep demanding change. Because in 70 years, the next caregiver like me who's caring for the people who are held hostage in cruel, inhumane US detention camps, what stories are they going to hear from their patients? What comforts are they going to need to give in the middle of the night? And what decades-long tears and anguish are they going to have to wipe away as they wonder what kind of country would let something like this happen?
Is anybody missing their child? Because he is missing his adults. He hasn't told us his name. He's wearing a Mad City shirt, and it's kind of orange, apricot color, and a happy ending. We're going to hear from Pastor Mary Farmer. She lived in Annunciation House in the community in El Paso, Texas. She's going to tell us about what she did there.
Hello, hello, and I am not climbing up on this table. You're just going to have to pretend I'm taller, okay? I'm just not doing it. Go back where you tell me. It's come in the front. Okay. All right. I was fortunate, blessed to spend winter in El Paso at Annunciation House last winter, and then this spring I went back with a friend down Route 66 carrying thousands of pairs of underwear from Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you very much. And toothbrushes and razors and socks. Things that when you hear these detention stories, you know that people don't have those anymore. They're taken from them or they never had them. So people really need the very, very basics. We are going to be lighting lights very soon, and we've got this great torch in front of us, reminding us of the artificial light, of the light that we bring in, but each one of us has light. You all, each of you carry a light within you, the light of justice, the light of hope, the light of courage, and the light of power. You have light. Tell the person next to you, you have light. You have light. You have light. You are light. You are light. Tell them you are light. You are light.
You are light.
You are light.
You are.
I want to tell you about a few of the lights that I met when I was at Annunciation House. I don't speak Spanish very well at all, like hardly. And so I hung out with the kids. They were the ones who taught me and who showed me, and we colored together and read stories and played with blocks and Legos, all the fun kid stuff to do, and they could laugh at my Spanish and I wasn't even offended. They just had a great time. Well, one of those light bearers, one of those teachers for me was a little girl about 8 years old. Her name was Lucita. I've changed all the names. Lucita, light. And Lucita and I colored and we played and we built things, structures with Legos, and we had such a good time. She was at Annunciation House at Casa Vides, where I was, waiting to travel with her father, waiting to travel to sponsors across the United States. That's the people who were housed, who were welcomed in our home. Well, after we played and we talked and we laughed, she dug down into her backpack, just dug, took out all kinds of stuff and took out a tiny bag of gummy bears. A tiny bag of gummy bears, and she gave it to me. I took the gummy bears and held them to my heart. What could I do? I mean, such a gesture of generosity from this tiny child. It was like a spark of light illuminating. Another spark of light was Mateo and his dad. His dad had been waiting for days to take the bus to go to New Jersey, and it was an anxious and long wait. He was very worried, didn't sleep at night, sat up on the couch, and Mateo just sat next to him and held his dad's hand. Well, after a couple of days, I thought, we got to do something here. I can't speak very well. Other people are doing all kinds of work, so we played checkers. We played checkers, and every hour the rules of the checker game changed. And I lost real bad. I lost the checkers really bad. But that light of Mateo and his dad and the illuminating smiles they had when they were able to walk to the bus, to get on the Greyhound bus for their 3-day journey to go to relatives, is a light that I still have, that I still hold. There was another young man there, 15 years old, Eduardo, and Eduardo loved cars. He just really wanted a car. And we happen to have a book that has intricacies of car motors and different styles of cars and different ages of cars. And he looked at that book and explained every motor to me in Spanish. And I laughed and I smiled and I just was as happy as I could be. I had no clue. And he knew I had no clue, which was even more fun. By the end of his couple of days there, we began calling him Señor Camero. Senor Camero. And I wonder where he is now. How he and his dad were to make that journey, how they could do that. And where he is, what his transportation is. The goal of our house, of Annunciation House, which I have more to tell you about in my 5 or 6 minutes, but I can do that another time. The goal of Annunciation House was to take people from deportation, and you have heard the terrible stories of what happens to them and the situation, and bring them into an open-hearted, open-armed house of hospitality. That's what Annunciation House is all about. Google them up. Google them up. And there's a lot of folks here who've been at Annunciation House. You know what I'm talking about. You know what it's like. Well, 2 of my teachers there, 2 of the volunteers that I worked with, had a combined time of about 40 years in Central and South America. 2 Irish nuns, Sister B and Sister Rosaline. And Sister B and Sister Rosaline and I and other volunteers would go every time a bus came with people who were being moved from deportation by ICE and by Border Patrol, and come to our house, and we would go to the door to greet them. They got off the bus with nothing. Maybe a little plastic bag of a few possessions. Some of them had their papers. Some of them papers had gotten lost in all of this travel. And so people came bewildered and confused and wondering where were they going? Were they going to another jail? Well, Sister B and Sister Rosaline would go up to every family, embrace and hug, and take each child's face in their hands and say, "Preciosa, precioso." Can you imagine what it did to that parent after being the travel they've gone through to get to El Paso, after being in deportation, and have somebody hold their kid's face in their hands and say, "Precioso, preciosa, you are precious." I think of this when I hear the news, when I see the terrible situations of children in Libya and children in those rocking boats crossing the Mediterranean. So many, many children who are precious, who are precious. Let's say that together. They are precious. The children are precious. We need to hold them, to hold their faces in our hands in whatever way we can, and tell them how precious they are. You are light. You have light.
A wonderful group of young people who have agreed to read excerpts from testimony in a case Flores versus Barr, in which they are suing the government to let these children go. And these are in the words of the children who have spoken with them.
We are in a metal cage with 20 other teenagers with babies and young children. We have one mat we need to share with each other. It is very cold. We each got a Mylar blanket, but it is not enough to warm up. There are benches, but we cannot sleep there. Sometimes it is so crowded we cannot find a place to sleep, so they allow a few of us to sleep outside the fenced area. The lights are on all the time. Age 16, girl.
I'm hungry. Here at the clinic all the time. I'm so hungry that I have woken up in the middle of the night with hunger. Sometimes I wake up from the hunger at 4 a.m., sometimes at other hours. I'm so scared to ask the officials here for any more food, even though there's not enough food here for me. Boy, age 12.
We slept on mats on the floor and they gave us aluminum blankets. They took our baby's diapers, baby formula, and all of our belongings. Our clothes were still wet and we were very cold, so we got sick. I've been in the US for 6 days and I have never been offered a shower or been able to brush my teeth. There is no soap and our clothes are dirty. They have never been washed. Age 16, girl.
3 days ago, my baby soiled his clothes. I had no place to wash the clothes, so I could not put them back on my baby because when he went to the bathroom, his poop came out of his diaper and all over his clothing. Since then, my baby of only 3 months has only been wearing a small little jacket made of t-shirt material. I have nothing else for my son to wear. I've been told they do not have any clothes here at this place. I just want my baby to be warm enough. I am having to make sure I carry my baby super close to me to keep his little body warm. Age 17, girl.
They told us that we could only have one layer of clothing, and they threw the rest of our clothes in the garbage. Age 16, boy.
My baby got wet and I had to take his pants off 2 days ago, and I have not been able to get any pants for him. Age 18, girl.
The day we arrived, my baby girl became sick. She could not open her eyes and had a fever which got much worse during the day. I asked the guard for help, and he told me to just deal with it. I asked for help again and was ignored. The third time I asked, I was crying because she was so much worse. I was very worried for her. After 2 days, they took her to the doctor. Age unknown, girl.
We have only bathed once since being detained. On June 4th, we were taken to an area with about 28 showers. We bathed and brushed our teeth. Since then, however, we've not been able to bathe. I have not been able to wash and clean my baby since June 4th. We do not have toothbrushes or toothpaste or towels in the cages. My daughter's onesie is very dirty. I have not been able to wash it since June 4th. Age 17, girl.
The day after we arrived here, my baby began vomiting and having diarrhea. I asked to see a doctor and they did not take us. I asked again the next day and the guard said, "She doesn't have the face of a sick kid. She doesn't need to see a doctor." My baby daughter has not had medicine since we first arrived. She has a very bad cough, fever, and continues to vomit and have diarrhea. Girl, age 16.
At Ursula, we haven't been able to shower. The toilet's out in the open cage. There's no door for any privacy. There's water and no soap to wash our hands. There are no paper towels to dry our hands. We have not been given a toothbrush or toothpaste to brush our teeth. Age 17, boy.
I was given a blanket and a mattress, but then at 3 a.m., the guards took the blanket and mattress. My baby was left sleeping on the floor. In fact, almost every night, the guards wake us up at 3 a.m. and take away our sleeping mattresses and blankets. They leave babies, even little babies of 2 or 3 months, sleeping on the cold floor. For me, because I am so pregnant, sleeping on the floor is very painful for my back and hips. I think the guards act this way to punish us. Age 17, girl.
Once I needed clean clothing for my baby because she threw up. But when I asked for them, I was told that they didn't have any available. She is still in the same dirty clothes. Age 17, girl.
I started taking care of them, age 5, in the icebox after they were separated from her father. I did not know either one of them before that. She was very upset. The workers did nothing to try to comfort her. I tried to comfort her, and she's been with me ever since. She sleeps on the mat with me on the concrete floor. We spend all day in that room. There are no activities, only crying. Age 15, girl.
There are little kids here who have no one to take care of them, not even a big brother or sister. Some kids are only 2 or 3 years old and they have no one to take care of them. Age 11, boy.
I am in a room with dozens of other boys. Some have been as young as 3 or 4 years old. Some cry. Right now there is a 12-year-old who cries a lot. Others try to comfort him. One of the officers makes fun of those who cry. Age 17, boy.
I was apprehended with my father. The immigration agents separated me from my father right away. I was very frightened and scared. I cried. I have not seen my father again. I have had a cold and cough for several days. I have not seen a doctor, and I have not been given any medicine. boy, age 5.
They took us away from our grandmother, and now we are all alone. They have not given us to our mother. We have been here for a long time. I have to take care of my little sister. She is very sad because she misses our mother and grandmother very much. We sleep on a cement bench. There are 2 mats in the room, but the big kids sleep on the mats, so we have to sleep on the cement bench. Age 8 boy.
At 3 a.m. the next day, the officers told us that our grandmother would be taken away. My grandmother tried to show the officers a paper signed by my parents, saying that my grandmother had been entrusted to care for us. The officers rejected the paperwork, saying that it had to be signed by a judge. Then the officers took my dear grandmother away. We've not seen her since that moment. Age 12, girl.
Now I have the difficult job of saying the names of 6 migrant children who have died in U.S. custody. Darlin Cristobal Cordoba Valleja, age 10, from El Salvador. Jacqueline Cal Maquin, age 7, from Guatemala. Felipe Gomez Alonso, age 8, from Guatemala. Juan de Leon Gutierrez, age 16, from Guatemala. Wilmer Josue Ramirez Vasquez, 2.5, from Guatemala. And Carlos Hernandez Vasquez, age 16, Guatemala. These children have names.
So we are women who love children, whether ours or someone else's. And we long to comfort the frightened and neglected little ones we're thinking about this evening. This Granny's lullaby is for them.
We'll be singing truth to power, changing things as best we can. You can trust your dear old granny. We are here to take a stand. This old world, it has some trouble, but they are here to stay. We'll go to the scoundrels out of office and enjoy a brighter day. So go to sleep now, precious baby. Then later give our songs a try. In your dreams you'll hear us humming as our granny lullaby.
Thank you. All human beings deserve the care and consideration we want for ourselves and our families. We leave you with "To Be Sheltered."
Tis a right to be sheltered, to be out of the rain, to have food and warmth and safety once again. In America there must be room to make this right and bring frightened refugees out of the night. Fear drove them to our border towns. We cannot be silent as they suffer
to say thank you to the grannies and to all of our speakers tonight.
Just gotta find my daughter now. My grandson.